deep beneath the surface of countless worlds, in chambers carved from living rock and reinforced with technologies beyond mortal comprehension, the Necrons sleep. They have slumbered for 60 million years, waiting in darkness absolute, their ancient tomb complexes hidden from the light of stars that were young when they first closed their eyes. But the galaxy is vast, and time changes all things. Worlds that were barren when the Necrons entered their great sleep have become verdant. Civilizations have risen and fallen. And sometimes, in the cruel arithmetic of war, the impossible happens. Sometimes, something finds its way into a tomb that was never meant to be disturbed. Imagine, if you will, a Necron tomb world awakening to full consciousness after countless millennia. The process is gradual, methodical, as systems that have lain dormant since before humanity's ancestors walked upright begin their startup sequences. Power cores flicker to life. Sensors sweep the surrounding stone for the first time in geological epochs. Canoptech constructs stir from their vigil, their scarab swarms beginning the endless work of maintenance and repair that keeps these ancient complexes functional. And then, deep within the labyrinthine passages of the tomb, the autonomous systems detect something that should not be there, something that does not belong, something that registers as neither Necron nor natural formation, nor the simple detritus of time. It is a Chaos Dreadnought, specifically a Berserker Dreadnought of the World Eaters, one of those terrible walking engines of destruction that the traitor legions deploy when they need violence incarnate. But this one is silent, dormant. Its power systems have cycled down to minimal function, its weapons cold, its optical sensors dark. Somehow, through a combination of circumstances that seems almost impossible, this relic of the Horus heresy has found its way into the deepest chambers of a Necron tomb complex. And now, as the Necrons awaken, they must decide what to do with this unexpected guest. The scenario we are exploring today is one that exists at the intersection of multiple impossibilities. It requires not only that a Chaos Dreadnought somehow penetrate a Necron tomb, but that it do so in a state of dormancy, that it remain undetected during whatever initial awakening protocols the tomb world might have already completed, and that the Necrons discover it before it reactivates. Each of these elements strains plausibility, which is precisely why examining them reveals so much about both factions. The Necrons and the Chaos Space Marines represent two of the most ancient and terrible forces in the Warhammer 40,000 universe, and their technologies, their philosophies, and their very natures stand in stark contrast to one another. When these contrasts collide, the results are always fascinating. To understand this scenario fully, we must first understand what Necron tomb worlds truly are, how they function, and why the presence of anything foreign within their chambers represents such a profound violation of their design. Then we must examine the Berserker Dreadnoughts themselves, these tortured fusion of ancient space marine and chaos-warped war machine, to comprehend what the Necrons would actually be facing. Only then can we explore the various ways this confrontation might unfold, the decisions the Necrons might make, and the consequences that would ripple outward from this singular moment when two ancient horrors meet in darkness. The nature of Necron. Tomb worlds. Necron tomb worlds are marvels of engineering that make even the most sophisticated Imperial technology seem primitive by comparison. These are not simple bunkers or storage facilities. They are planet-spanning complexes of such architectural ambition and technological sophistication that they border on the incomprehensible to younger races. To call them tombs undersells their true nature. They are preservation systems, military installations, cultural repositories, and slumbering civilizations, all wrapped into structures that exist partially in our reality and partially in pocket dimensions beyond normal space. The construction of these tomb worlds began during the final phases of the war in heaven. that ancient conflict between the Necron tier and the Old Ones that reshaped the galaxy itself. The Necron tier, having undergone biotransference and become the deathless Necrons, faced a new problem. They had achieved immortality in bodies of living metal, but the war they fought threatened to consume them entirely. The Citan, those terrible star gods they had allied with and then betrayed, still needed to be contained. The younger races created by the Old Ones grew stronger with each passing century, and so the Silent King, Sarek, made a decision that would echo through 60 million years. The Necrons would sleep. They would retreat into vast tomb complexes constructed deep within the crust of thousands of worlds, and there they would wait until the galaxy had aged, until the younger races had risen and perhaps fallen, until the time was right for the Necrons to reclaim their ancient dominion. The technology required to make this possible staggers the imagination. Each tomb world is built around a core of incredibly advanced systems that work in concert to preserve millions or even billions of Necron warriors in perfect stasis. These systems utilize principles of physics that the Adeptus Mechanicus would classify as impossible, manipulating space and time themselves to create pockets of timelessness where the Necrons could wait without degradation. The living metal of their necrodermis bodies, those forms of near-indestructible alloy shot through with self-repairing scarabs at the molecular level, would remain unchanged regardless of how many millennia passed outside their stasis chambers. At the heart of every tomb world lies what the Necrons call the tomb mind or deep spirit. This is an artificial intelligence of staggering complexity, a master autonomic program that oversees every aspect of the tomb's operation during the Great Sleep. The tomb mind is not truly sapient in the way that living beings are, but it possesses a form of awareness and decision-making capability that far exceeds any machine spirit the Imperium has ever created. It monitors countless systems simultaneously, managing power distribution, overseeing the Canoptech constructs that perform maintenance, detecting threats from outside the tomb, and making decisions about when and how to begin awakening the slumbering dynasties within. The physical structure of a tomb world reflects the hierarchical nature of Necron society. The deepest chambers, protected by the most sophisticated defenses and the thickest layers of living metal, contain the nobility. Overlords, lords, and pharaohs sleep in ornate sarcophagi that are works of art as much as they are stasis chambers. Their personal guards, the Lich Guard and Praetorians, rest in chambers adjacent to their masters, ready to protect them even from threats that might emerge during the sleep itself. Above them, in vast halls that could swallow imperial cathedrals, rank upon rank of Necron warriors and immortals wait in perfect stillness. Their simplified engrams, requiring less sophisticated preservation than the more complex personalities of their betters. Throughout the entire complex, Canoptech constructs patrol in an endless vigil. These are not Necrons in the traditional sense, but rather sophisticated autonomous machines designed for specific functions. Scarabs, those ubiquitous beetle-like constructs, crawl through every chamber and corridor, repairing damage, recycling materials, and ensuring that the tomb's systems remain operational. Canoptech spiders, larger and more complex, maintain communication networks and can fabricate new scarabs as needed. Canoptech wraiths phase in and out of normal space, providing security against threats that might somehow bypass the tomb's outer defenses. And all of them answer to the tomb mind, which coordinates their actions with the precision of a master conductor directing an orchestra that has been playing the same symphony for millions of years. The defensive systems of a tomb world are multi-layered and ruthlessly efficient. The outermost defenses are often the world itself, camouflaged so thoroughly that orbital surveys might detect nothing unusual. Many tomb worlds lie hidden beneath planets that the Imperium has colonized, their human populations completely unaware that they build their cities atop a sleeping nightmare. Deeper defenses include automated weapon systems that can engage threats with Gauss weaponry, capable of stripping matter apart at the atomic level, Tesla weapons that arc lightning between multiple targets, and stranger armaments that manipulate gravity or phase targets partially into other dimensions where they can be more easily destroyed. But the most sophisticated defense a tomb world possesses is its awakening protocol. This is not a simple on-off switch, but rather a carefully orchestrated sequence that can take decades or even centuries to complete fully. When the tomb mind detects a threat that exceeds its autonomous defense's capability to handle, it begins activating sections of the tomb in a prioritized order. First come the basic warrior constructs, mindless automatons that can overwhelm simple threats through sheer numbers. If the threat persists, more sophisticated units are awakened. Immortals, with their greater tactical programming. Destroyers, those Necrons who have given themselves over entirely to the urge to exterminate organic life. Triarch Praetorians, if the tomb possesses them. The process continues, each tier of awakening bringing more powerful and more intelligent units online, until finally the nobility themselves are roused to deal with threats that require true strategic thinking. This gradual awakening serves multiple purposes. It conserves power, which even for Necron technology is not infinite after 60 million years. It reduces the risk of catastrophic failure, as awakening an entire tomb world simultaneously would place incredible strain on systems that may have degraded during the Great Sleep. And it allows the tomb to respond proportionally to threats, not wasting resources on problems that simpler solutions can solve. But this system, sophisticated as it is, was never designed to handle the specific scenario we are examining. The Necrons planned for attacks from outside their tombs. They anticipated Xenos raiders, treasure hunters, and even the possibility of coordinated assault by enemy forces. What they did not anticipate was something finding its way into the deepest chambers of the tomb while still dormant itself, something that their sensors might initially classify as debris or geological anomaly rather than threat. And they certainly did not anticipate that this something might be a piece of technology nearly as ancient as their own, from a race that did not even exist when the Necrons first went to sleep. The tomb world we are imagining has been awakening for several years already. Perhaps it detected the activity of an Imperial colony on the surface. Perhaps gravitational sensors registered the passage of too many ships through the system's outer reaches. Perhaps it simply reached a predetermined awakening date, encoded into its protocols 60 million years ago. Whatever the reason, the process has begun. Lower levels of the tomb have activated. Warrior constructs have stirred from their slumber, their reanimation protocols bringing them back to a semblance of function, despite the degradation of eons. A few immortals have awakened, their greater intelligence needed to coordinate the warriors in simple defensive patterns. And somewhere in the tomb's mid-levels, a cryptech has been roused from sleep, his technical expertise required to assess the tomb's systems and ensure that the awakening proceeds according to ancient specifications. It is during a routine scan of the tomb's deeper chambers, areas that have not yet been scheduled for activation, that the anomaly is detected. The sensor returns from sublevel 97, chamber epsilon, show something that the tomb mind's classification algorithms struggle to pass. It is metallic, but the composition does not match Necron alloys. It contains a power source, but one that operates on principles foreign to Necron engineering. It has the general configuration of a combat platform, but its design philosophy speaks to a completely different understanding of war and technology. The tomb mind, acting with the caution programmed into it millions of years ago, flags the anomaly for closer examination and begins routing more sensor resources to chamber epsilon, while simultaneously alerting the cryptech to the situation. What the sensors have found, though the tomb mind does not yet know it, is something that should not exist in its universe of calculated possibilities. It is a Berserker Dreadnought, and its presence in this place represents a convergence of unlikely events that borders on the impossible. Berserker Dreadnoughts, the World Eater's walking fury. To understand what the Necrons have discovered, we must journey back 10,000 years to the Horus Heresy and the fall of the World Eater's Legion. These were once loyal servants of the Emperor, space marines who embodied the principle of direct, overwhelming assault. Their primarch, Angron, was found on a world where he had been enslaved and forced to fight as a gladiator. The experience had marked him, both psychologically and physically. The butcher's nails, those archaeotech implants hammered into his skull, filled his mind with rage and gave him no peace except in battle. When the Emperor took him from his homeworld, leaving his fellow gladiators to die without him, Angron's bitterness curdled into something darker. The World Eaters, in an attempt to understand and emulate their gene father, began implanting themselves with the butcher's nails. The practice spread through the Legion like a virus. These neural implants, crude by the standards of the Adeptus Mechanicus, but brutally effective, stimulated the aggression centers of the brain while suppressing higher cognitive functions. A space marine with the nails experienced constant, gnawing pain that could only be alleviated through violence. The more they killed, the more pleasure the nails provided. The less they fought, the more they suffered. It was a perfect feedback loop for creating berserkers, warriors who would throw themselves at the enemy with no regard for tactics, strategy, or their own survival. When the Horus heresy erupted and Angron led his legion to chaos, the World Eaters fell further than most. While other traitor legions maintained some semblance of organization and tactical doctrine, the World Eaters devolved into blood-mad killers who fought for the sheer joy of slaughter. They dedicated themselves to Khorne, the blood god, and in return received his blessings and his curses in equal measure. Their battlefields became charnel houses. Their assaults became suicidal charges that relied on momentum and fury rather than coordination, and their casualties mounted to levels that would have destroyed any other legion. The Dreadnoughts of the World Eaters reflected this savage philosophy. Even before the heresy, the Legion had begun modifying their Dreadnought chassis to better suit their aggressive tactics. These modifications created what would later be classified as Berserker Dreadnoughts, war machines optimized for close combat assault and line breaking rather than the more balanced loadouts preferred by other legions. They were larger than standard patterns, faster, and equipped almost exclusively with close combat weapons. Power fists capable of crushing battle tanks, chain weapons that could dismember squads with a single sweep, flamers for burning out entrenched positions. Everything about their design spoke to a single purpose: get to the enemy as quickly as possible and tear them apart. The process of interment in a dreadnought is traumatic under the best circumstances. A space marine must be mortally wounded, their body so damaged that even the legendary regenerative capabilities of the Astartes cannot save them. What remains of them, often little more than a torso and head, is sealed within the armored sarcophagus at the heart of the dreadnought. Life support systems keep their remaining organs functional. Neural interfaces link what is left of their nervous system to the dreadnought's control mechanisms. The transformation is total and irreversible. The space marine will never again feel the warmth of sunlight on their skin, never taste food or water, never experience any sensation, except what the dreadnought's sensors can provide. For a World Eater, this transformation carries additional horror. The butcher's nails continue to function even after interment, still demanding violence, still causing pain when that demand is not met. But now the marine is trapped in a metal shell, unable to satisfy the nail's hunger, except when the dreadnought is activated for battle. Between deployments, they are kept in stasis, and for a World Eater, this is perhaps a mercy. The alternative, remaining conscious for years or decades between battles, while the nails scream for blood that cannot be shed, would drive even a Chaos Space Marine completely mad. After the heresy, the situation grew worse. The Chaos Legions lost access to much of the sophisticated technology needed to maintain dreadnoughts properly. The Imperium's tech marines keep their dreadnoughts in carefully regulated stasis chambers, their pilots preserved in a state as close to true sleep as the fusion of man and machine allows. The Chaos Space Marines lack this technology. Their dreadnoughts, particularly the older patterns from the Heresy era, must endure waking consciousness even when not deployed. The pilot's mind, subjected to the warping influence of chaos, the constant torment of their implants, and the sensory deprivation of their metal tomb, degenerates over the centuries. Many go completely insane, their thoughts a scrambled howl of rage and pain. These mad dreadnoughts are kept in chains between battles, restrained until they can be unleashed upon the enemy like rabid animals. The Berserker dreadnought we are discussing is one of these ancient machines. It is a contemptor pattern chassis, dating back to the Horus heresy itself, or perhaps even earlier. 10,000 years have passed since its creation. Its pilot, whoever they once were, has long since lost any connection to their original identity. The engrams that held their personality, their memories, their sense of self, have degraded under the combined assault of time, chaos, and the butcher's nails. What remains is something that can barely be called human or even space marine. It is a consciousness, yes, but one reduced to its most primitive components: rage, hunger for violence, pain. And underneath it all, buried so deep that even the pilot themselves might not recognize it, the faintest echo of loyalty to brothers long dead and a legion that no longer exists in any meaningful form. The war machine itself bears the scars of 10 millennia of warfare. Its adamantium armor is pitted with impacts from weapons that have not been manufactured in thousands of years. Heraldry that once proclaimed allegiance to the 12th Legion has been defaced and replaced with symbols of Khorne, the brass icons of the blood god hammered into metal that has been painted red with the dried blood of countless victims. The weapons mounted on its arms, a chain fist and a heavy flamer modified to spew promethium, mixed with alchemically treated blood, show signs of both extensive use and haphazard maintenance. This is not a precision instrument maintained by skilled artificers. This is a tool of slaughter that has been kept functional through brute force repairs and the intervention of chaos-tainted sorcery. Inside the sarcophagus, suspended in amniotic fluid that has grown foul over the centuries, what remains of the original Space Marine has fused with the Dreadnought in ways that go beyond simple neural interface. Chaos corruption has caused flesh and metal to merge in places, creating a grotesque hybridization that would appall even the dark mechanicum's most radical tech adepts. The body shows signs of mutation, of demonic influence held barely in check by the Dreadnought's systems. Tumorous growths press against the interior of the sarcophagus. Organs have transformed into things that serve no biological function, but continue to pulse with unnatural life. The brain, that most vital component, remains functional but changed, its neural pathways rewired by the butcher's nails and warped by exposure to the Imperium. The Dreadnought's power systems, designed to operate for decades between recharging, have run nearly dry. Its last battle was months or perhaps years ago, the details lost in the fog of degraded memory systems. At some point, its warband was defeated, scattered, or simply moved on without retrieving the dormant war machine. The automatic shutdown protocols engaged, putting the Dreadnought into the lowest possible power state to preserve what energy remained. In this state, it is barely distinguishable from a powered-down vehicle. Its heat signature is minimal. Its power emissions are negligible. To the casual observer, it might be a piece of abandoned battlefield salvage, a relic left to rust in the aftermath of some forgotten skirmish. But it is not dead. Deep within its systems, barely above complete shutdown, essential functions continue. The life support maintains the pilot's body at minimal parameters. The neural interfaces remain active, keeping the connection between flesh and machine intact. And in the sarcophagus, the pilot's mind exists in something between sleep and waking, dreaming confused dreams of battles fought millennia ago, of brothers whose faces have been forgotten, of rage and blood and the endless gnawing pain of the nails that never truly stops. This is what the Necrons have found in their tomb. Not an invader in the traditional sense, but a sleeping nightmare that matches their own nature in unexpected ways. Both are ancient beyond the reckoning of younger races. Both are fusions of consciousness and machine. Both have survived for impossible lengths of time through technological means. And both, in their way, are tombs, prisons that preserve something that might be better off dead. How a dreadnought could enter a tomb. The question of how a chaos dreadnought could find its way into the deepest chambers of a Necron tomb world requires us to examine the intersection of war, geology, and sheer improbability. Under normal circumstances, such an occurrence would be impossible. Necron tomb worlds are sealed systems, their entrances hidden or collapsed, their internal chambers separated from the outside world by miles of solid rock and layers of defensive systems. But the galaxy is old, and in 10 million years of warfare across countless worlds, normal circumstances become flexible concepts. Consider first the possibility of geological catastrophe. The tomb world in question might have been stable when the Necrons first went to sleep 60 million years ago, its structure sound, its chambers secure. But planets are living things in their own way, subject to tectonic forces that operate on timescales that dwarf even Necron patience. A seismic event, perhaps triggered by the impact of an asteroid or the eruption of a supervolcano, could crack open sections of the tomb complex that were meant to remain sealed. New fissures might form, connecting chambers that had been isolated to cave systems or fault lines that run deep into the planet's crust. If such a catastrophe occurred relatively recently in geological terms, perhaps only a few thousand years ago, it might create pathways into the tomb before the Canoptech constructs could fully repair the damage. The scarabs and spiders work tirelessly, but they are not infinite in number, and their priorities are managed by the tomb mind according to algorithms that might not immediately recognize a new crack in the tomb's outer shell as a critical threat. If the breach is small enough, if it is located in a section of the tomb far from any active systems, it might be classified as low priority, scheduled for eventual repair, but not immediately addressed. Now introduce warfare into this scenario. The planet's surface has been conquered and reconquered multiple times over the past several thousand years. Imperial colonists established settlements, not knowing what lay beneath their feet. Orcs invaded, their love of destruction leading them to blast massive craters into the planet's crust during their assault. Eldar raiders swept in, seeking artifacts or simply killing for sport, their weapons leaving scars on the landscape that penetrate deep underground. Each conflict adds more damage, more potential access points, more chaos to the geological stability that the Necrons had assumed would last forever. In one of these conflicts, a World Eater's warband arrives. They are pursuing an enemy, or perhaps simply following the scent of battle, drawn by Khorne's will to a world where blood has been shed in quantities sufficient to catch the blood god's attention. The fighting is brutal and confused, taking place across multiple fronts and at multiple scales simultaneously. Orbital bombardment cracks open the surface. Ground combat churns through industrial sectors and across Badlands. And in one particular engagement, a Berserker Dreadnought, already damaged from previous fighting, finds itself separated from its warband during a strategic withdrawal. The withdrawal becomes a rout. Imperial forces, or perhaps Xeno's enemies, press hard, exploiting a moment of weakness in the chaos assault. The World Eaters fall back in disorder, their natural tendency toward berserk charges working against them when they need organized retreat. The Dreadnought, its power systems already compromised, its weapons nearly depleted, makes a final stand to buy time for its retreating brothers. It holds a choke point, a narrow canyon, or a collapsed hab block, killing everything that tries to pass. And then, with a final grinding of servos, its power fails completely. The automatic shutdown engages. The Dreadnought goes dormant, standing silent in a crater of its own making, surrounded by the corpses of its final victims. The battle moves on. The World Eaters escape off-world, unable to return for their fallen comrade. The victorious forces advance past the dormant war machine, not recognizing it for what it is, or perhaps simply leaving it for later salvage that never comes. Days pass. Weeks. The battlefield is abandoned as the conflict moves to other fronts or other worlds entirely. And then nature intervenes. A storm strikes the region, one of those planet-wrecking atmospheric events that make certain worlds infamous for their hostile environments. Rain falls in torrential sheets, erosion accelerates, and water begins to pool in low-lying areas. The crater where the Dreadnought stands begins to fill. The water level rises, submerging first the base of the machine, then its torso, then finally closing over its head. The weight of the water, combined with the unstable geology created by years of warfare, causes a collapse. The Dreadnought drops into darkness, falling through layers of soil and rock, bouncing off walls of ancient stone, until it lodges in a cavern that connects to the fault lines created by that ancient seismic event. Water continues to pour in, creating a temporary underground river that shifts the Dreadnought further into the cave system. It is wedged into cracks, pushed by currents, rolled by the force of flooding, all while remaining completely dormant, its shutdown systems preserving it through impacts that would destroy a lesser machine. Over the course of days or weeks, this natural conveyor of stone and water carries the Dreadnought deeper into the planet's crust. It passes through cave systems that have never seen light. It drops down vertical shafts created by ancient lava tubes. It slides along paths smoothed by underground rivers that have flowed for millions of years. And eventually, impossible as it seems, it enters a section of cavern that connects to the Necron tomb. Through one of those fissures the Canoptech constructs have not yet reached. A crack in the tomb's outer shell, so far from any active section that it barely registered on the tomb mine's priority list. Gravity and water flow do the rest. The Dreadnought slides through the fissure, its bulk just barely narrow enough to fit through the gap. It drops into Chamber Epsilon, sublevel 97, a storage area in the tomb's deep levels that has not been activated in 60 million years and is not scheduled for activation for several more decades. The impact when it hits the chamber floor is tremendous, but the Dreadnought's construction is robust, designed to withstand the stress of orbital drops and battlefield punishment. It survives largely intact. The water that carried it drains away through other cracks in the chamber, leaving the Dreadnought lying on its side on a floor of Necron construction, among storage canisters that hold spare parts for war machines that were old when humanity's ancestors were still living in trees. The fissure through which it entered begins to seal as scarabs, finally reaching this section of the tomb, repair the breach with living metal that flows like liquid before hardening to diamond strength. Within hours, Chamber Epsilon is once again a sealed system, cut off from the outside world, and the Dreadnought lies there, dormant, its power systems in shutdown, waiting for a recharge that may never come, or for enemies that may never appear. It is a message in a bottle, thrown into the ocean of time and chance, now washed up on a shore stranger than any its creators could have imagined. The Necron awakening process. The detection of the Dreadnought comes during what the Necrons would classify as Phase 3 of the tomb's awakening sequence. This is weeks after the initial stirring of the tomb's systems, days after the first warriors shambled from their stasis chambers, hours after the Cryptech was roused to assess the tomb's readiness for higher-level activations. The tomb is coming to life gradually, carefully, each system brought online in a sequence designed to minimize strain and maximize reliability. The tomb. Mind that governs this process is running diagnostic subroutines on thousands of systems simultaneously. Power distribution networks are checked for degradation. Stasis chamber integrity is verified across millions of individual units. Defensive systems are tested in simulation before being activated. Communication relays are powered up and synchronized. It is a process of staggering complexity, made more difficult by the fact that 60 million years of dormancy have left their mark, even on technology as sophisticated as the Necrons possess. Some sections of the tomb have suffered critical failures. Entire chambers have gone dark, their occupants lost to entropy or system collapse. In the deepest levels, where the oldest and most prestigious members of the dynasty sleep, some sarcophagi show no response to awakening signals. Their occupants potentially lost forever, or trapped in a state between death and function that may never resolve. The tomb mind catalogues these failures with algorithmic efficiency, rerouting resources, adjusting awakening schedules, compensating for lost capabilities by prioritizing the units and systems that remain functional. In this context, the anomaly in Chamber Epsilon is initially classified as just another failure, another piece of damage to be assessed and filed for eventual repair. The chamber itself is not critical to the awakening sequence. It contains spare parts and backup equipment, nothing that needs to be active for Phase 3 operations. The tomb mind flags it as a minor curiosity, something to investigate when more pressing matters have been resolved, and continues with its primary functions. But the cryptech who has been awakened to oversee the tomb's technical aspects is more curious than the tomb mind's algorithms would be. This cryptech is a technomancer, a specialist in maintaining and repairing Necron systems. And like all cryptechs, their personality has survived the Great Sleep more intact than the simplified warrior constructs. Personality means curiosity. Curiosity means investigation. The technomancer's name, in the ancient Necrontier language that only the nobility still remember, translates roughly to "he who shapes the eternal." In current designations, he is known as Cryptech Master Armontek of the Third Analytical Conclave. He served this dynasty for thousands of years before the Great Sleep, maintaining the technology that made their empire possible, studying the secrets of the living metal, perfecting the reanimation protocols that allow Necrons to rise from apparent destruction. When biotransference robbed the Necrontier of their flesh, it was cryptechs like Armontek who ensured the process was as successful as possible, who ironed out the flaws in the translation from organic to mechanical, who preserved what could be preserved of their people's minds and souls. The long sleep has affected Armontek differently than it has affected the warriors. His engrams are more complex, his personality more resilient, but even he can feel the gaps in his memory, the subjects he once mastered completely that now seem slightly foreign. He remembers the theory behind dimensional pocket manipulation, but the specific equations have become fuzzy. He knows the fundamental principles of Gauss field generation, but some of the more esoteric applications escape his recall. It is frustrating in a way that his mechanical form cannot fully express, this knowledge that he has been diminished, that the sleep has taken things from him that can never be fully recovered. So when the Tomb Minds report mentions an anomaly, something that doesn't fit expected parameters, Armontek's interest is piqued. This is a distraction from the tedious work of checking power relays and verifying stasis field generators. This is something unknown, and the unknown represents the possibility of learning, of discovery, of engaging with his function as a cryptech in ways that mere maintenance cannot provide. He dispatches a squad of Canoptech wraiths to Chamber Epsilon to investigate. These constructs are perfect for the task, capable of phasing through solid matter, equipped with sophisticated sensors, and completely expendable if the anomaly proves dangerous. They slip through the tomb's structure like ghosts through walls, materializing in Chamber Epsilon within moments of receiving their orders. The Wraith's first scan of the Dreadnought produces data that Armontek finds immediately fascinating. The object is clearly a war machine, but its design principles are completely foreign to Necron technology. Where Necron construction favors flowing curves of living metal and elegant efficiency, this thing is all brutal angles and crude mechanisms. Where Necron systems utilize principles of physics that the builders clearly do not understand, this machine works on concepts that are technically sound, but executed with what Armontek can only classify as barbaric inelegance. The power source intrigues him particularly. It appears to be some kind of miniaturized plasma reactor, a technology the Necrons mastered and then abandoned millions of years ago as insufficiently efficient. But this reactor has modifications, refinements, that suggest its builders approached the problem from a completely different direction than the Necrontyr ever did. The magnetic containment fields use principles that Amontech recognizes, but arranged in patterns he has never seen. The fuel cycling system appears to involve actual chemical reactions, something the Necrons have not used for power generation since before their empire spanned the stars. More scans reveal additional oddities. There is biological matter inside the machine, organic components, degraded and corrupted, but unmistakably living tissue at some point. The cryptech's reaction to this discovery is complex. Disgust, certainly, for beings of living metal view organic matter as fundamentally inferior, but also curiosity, because the tissue appears to have been integrated into the machine systems with a sophistication that suggests deliberate design rather than contamination. Amontech orders the wraiths to transmit continuous data while he analyzes the readings. The machine's armor, he determines, is some kind of super-dense alloy that incorporates molecular bonding techniques similar to what the Necrons use in their own construction, though executed far more crudely. The weapons, now powered down and cold, appear designed for direct physical violence rather than the elegant molecular disruption of Gauss technology. One is a grinding blade weapon that rotates, of all things, like a primitive sawing tool scaled up to absurd proportions. The other is a flame projector because apparently whoever built this believed that burning enemies was an efficient use of combat resources. But it is the central sarcophagus, that armored box at the heart of the machine, that holds Amontech's attention. The biological matter is concentrated there, suspended in fluid that his sensors analyze as a crude but functional life support medium. And the neural interfaces, those connections between the organic components and the machine systems, speak to a technology that the cryptech finds both repulsive and oddly familiar. This is not so different from biotransference, he realizes. This is another race's attempt to fuse consciousness with machinery to preserve a warrior beyond the death of their flesh. The implications disturb Amontech in ways he has difficulty processing. The Necrontyr's biotransference was a singular event in galactic history, a transformation so profound that it had never been repeated. The Necrons themselves are unique, or so he has always believed. But here is evidence that other races, younger races, have attempted similar fusions of flesh and metal. The execution is cruder, the technology more primitive, but the fundamental concept is the same. He needs to know more. He needs to understand what this machine is, who built it, when it was created, and most importantly, how it came to be in this chamber. The tomb mine's records show no intrusion alerts, no breach warnings, nothing to suggest that this thing fought its way into the tomb. It simply appeared, or rather, it was discovered when scans finally reached this chamber that had been sealed for 60 million years. Amontech initiates a detailed archaeological analysis of the chamber itself. Scarabs are dispatched to examine the walls, the floor, the ceiling, looking for any sign of how the machine entered. They find it quickly, a sealed fissure in the upper wall, the living metal there showing signs of recent repair work. The fissure connects to natural cave systems that apparently penetrate deep into the planet's crust. A geological breach, then. The machine fell or was washed into the tomb through natural processes. This should be impossible. The statistical probability so low that it barely registers, but the evidence is undeniable. Somehow, through a combination of planetary instability and sheer chance, this ancient war machine found its way into Chamber Epsilon. The cryptech considers his options. He could simply report the anomaly to his superiors and continue with his assigned tasks. The overlords, when they awaken, will decide what to do with this intruder. But that assumes the overlords will awaken properly, that their engrams have survived the Great Sleep intact enough to make coherent decisions, and it assumes they will appreciate the significance of what has been found here. No, Amontech decides, this requires immediate investigation. The machine is dormant, but potentially reactivatable. Its technology, while crude, might offer insights into what the younger races have achieved during the Necrons' absence. And there is always the possibility, however remote, that it could pose a threat to the tomb's systems if left unexamined. He composes a report for the Tomb Mind, classifying the anomaly as potentially significant and requesting authorization to conduct a detailed examination. The response comes back within microseconds, the Tomb Mind's algorithms assessing the request and granting permission. Chamber Epsilon is reclassified as an active research site, its priority elevated, additional resources allocated to Ahmontek's investigation. The Cryptek begins assembling what he will need. More sophisticated analysis equipment than the Wraiths carry. Specialized scarabs capable of non-destructive disassembly. Power conduits in case he decides to reactivate the machine under controlled conditions. And, as a precaution, a squad of immortals to provide security, because while the machine appears dormant, appearances in the tomb complexes of ancient races are not always reliable. As preparations proceed, Ahmontek finds himself experiencing something he has not felt in millions of years. It takes him some time to identify the emotion, buried as it is beneath layers of mechanical logic and degraded engrams. But eventually he recognizes it. Excitement, scientific excitement, the thrill of discovery that first drove him to become a Cryptek rather than a warrior or administrator. Whatever this machine is, it represents knowledge, and knowledge has always been what Ahmontek values above all else. In the sarcophagus at the heart of the dormant Dreadnought, systems register a change in their environment. External sensors detect movement where before there was only stillness. Power signatures register nearby. Sophisticated technology activating in patterns that the Dreadnought's simple threat assessment algorithms struggle to classify. The pilot, lost in fever dreams of ancient battles, does not wake, but on some deep level, the machine knows that it is no longer alone in the darkness. Cryptek examination and debate. Chamber Epsilon transforms over the following days as Ahmontek brings the full resources of Necron analysis technology to bear on the Dreadnought. The chamber itself is cleansed first, scarabs swarming over every surface to remove the accumulated dust and debris of 60 million years. Lighting systems that have not functioned since before the Great Sleep flicker to life, banishing the darkness with the cold green glow of Necron illumination. Power conduits are run in from adjacent chambers, providing the energy needed for Ahmontek's equipment. And throughout it all, the Dreadnought lies silent in the center of the chamber, an island of foreign technology in a sea of ancient machinery. The examination begins with non-invasive scans. Ahmontek positions analysis devices around the Dreadnought, sophisticated instruments that can penetrate matter with exotic radiation and reconstruct internal structures with perfect accuracy. The data that comes back is voluminous, terabytes of information about the machine's composition, its internal systems, the state of degradation of various components. The Cryptek processes it all, his mechanical mind capable of parallel analysis that would overwhelm organic consciousness. The armor, he confirms, is indeed a super-dense alloy, though the exact composition varies across different sections of the machine. This suggests either battlefield repairs using whatever materials were available, or perhaps modifications made by different artificers over long periods. The thickness varies too, heaviest at the front and around the central sarcophagus, thinner at the joints and rear, where mobility concerns apparently outweighed protection. Crude, but effective for its purpose. The weapons receive particular attention. The chain fist is a marvel of brutal simplicity, a massive blade studded with diamond-hard teeth that rotate at tremendous speed, powered by a dedicated motor that connects to the Dreadnought's main power system. Ahmontek calculates the forces involved and concludes that the weapon could indeed shear through most standard armor, though the living metal of Necron construction would resist its attacks through rapid self-repair. The flamer is more concerning, modified to spray burning liquid at high pressure. The fuel tanks connected to what appears to be an alchemical mixing chamber that suggests the weapon's payload is more than simple promethium. But it is the sarcophagus that holds the greatest mystery. The organic components inside are extensively corrupted, showing signs of mutation that Amontech recognizes as similar to the Citan's manipulation of flesh during the ancient wars. This is chaos influence, he realizes, the touch of entities from the Imperium shaping physical matter according to non-physical principles. The discovery disturbs him. The Necrons warred against the Old Ones and their warp-using servants millions of years ago. But that war ended before biotransference. Have the entities of the warp survived all this time? Are they still corrupting the younger races? The neural interfaces connecting the organic core to the machine systems are analyzed next. They are startlingly sophisticated for such a primitive civilization, showing understanding of neurology and cybernetics that approaches Necron levels in some ways, while remaining hopelessly crude in others. The integration is permanent and irreversible, the biological components so thoroughly merged with the mechanical that separation would destroy both. This pilot, whoever they were, has no existence separate from their machine any more than a Necron has existence separate from their necrodermis body. Amontech composes a preliminary report on his findings and transmits it to the tomb mind. The response is not immediate, suggesting that the information is being reviewed by systems more sophisticated than the simple automated protocols. When the response comes, it includes a directive: continue analysis, but do not activate the device. The risk is deemed too high until more information is available. The cryptech complies, turning his attention to the question of the machine's origin and age. This proves challenging. The materials show signs of great age, but dating them precisely is difficult when you do not know the baseline composition. The chaos corruption obscures readings, introducing variables that Amontech's instruments were not designed to account for. But by analyzing wear patterns, radiation exposure, and the degradation of certain components, he arrives at an estimate that surprises him. The machine is approximately 10,000 years old, give or take a few centuries. This places its construction at a time when the Necrons were still deep in their great sleep, long after the fall of the ancient civilizations the Necrons remember. It is not merely younger than Necron technology, it is young by any standard Amontech can imagine, and yet it exists in a form that suggests the civilization that built it had access to technologies that should take millions of years to develop. These younger races have advanced far faster than the Necrons anticipated when they went to sleep. This realization prompts Amontech to request access to higher-level intelligence assets. The tomb is awakening more warriors and higher-tier constructs as the days pass. And among these is a Lichguard who served in the courts of the overlords before the sleep. Lichguard possess more sophisticated engrams than basic warriors, their roles as bodyguards and advisors requiring greater cognitive capacity. This particular Lichguard, designated Executor Ketoth, has military experience that might provide context for the discovery. Ketoth arrives in Chamber Epsilon, escorted by a squad of immortals, his ornate armor marking him as a veteran of countless battles. The Lichguard examines the Dreadnought with the eye of a warrior rather than a scientist, assessing it as a threat rather than a curiosity. His verdict, delivered in the clipped tones that all Necrons use for military reports, is concerning. The machine is clearly designed for assault operations, Ketoth explains. Its armor configuration, weapon loadout, and overall design philosophy speak to a role as a breakthrough unit, something that would be deployed at critical points to smash through enemy lines. The pilot's integration suggests they were a valued warrior, whose loss would have been mourned, preserved in this fashion because their combat experience was too valuable to lose. And the chaos corruption indicates that the civilization that built this has dealings with the entities of the warp, making them potentially as dangerous as the Old One's servant races. This prompts a debate between Amontech and Ketoth about what should be done with the machine. The cryptech argues for continued study, pointing out that the technology could provide invaluable intelligence about what the younger races have achieved. The Lichguard advocates for immediate destruction, citing the risk of chaos corruption spreading through the tomb if the machine is activated or even examined too closely. Their arguments are logical, dispassionate, but underneath the mechanical voices, the remnants of their personalities create subtle tensions. As they debate, another presence arrives in Chamber Epsilon. This is a canoptek spider, but one that moves with more deliberation than the mindless constructs that maintain the tomb. It approaches the Dreadnought, its multiple legs clicking against the chamber floor, its optical sensors focused intently on the foreign machine. Amontek recognizes the spider as one of the tomb's oldest constructs, a machine that has been performing maintenance for 60 million years. Its programming sophisticated enough to border on true awareness. The spider extends one of its manipulator arms and gently touches the Dreadnought's armor. Data flows through the connection, the canoptek construct analyzing the alloy's composition with the expertise of countless millennia of material science. And then it does something unexpected. It begins to spray a thin layer of living metal onto the Dreadnought's surface. Not enough to repair or modify, but enough to create a connection, a bridge between Necron and foreign technology. Amontek watches this with fascination and concern. The spiders are supposed to maintain Necron systems, not interact with alien technology. But this particular construct seems to recognize something in the Dreadnought, some kinship despite the vast differences in design philosophy. Perhaps it is the concept of preservation that resonates. The idea of maintaining a warrior beyond death through technological means. Or perhaps the spider's long service has given it a perspective that even the cryptech lacks. The living metal creates a connection that allows more sophisticated analysis. Through the spider's link, Amontek can sense the Dreadnought's power systems more clearly now. They are not dead, merely dormant, conserving the last dregs of energy in a shutdown state designed to preserve critical functions for as long as possible. With external power, the machine could be reactivated. With proper understanding of its systems, it could even be brought back to full function. The question is whether they should attempt this. Ketoth remains opposed, arguing that reactivating the machine risks releasing whatever corrupted consciousness lies within it. Amontek counters that without activation, they cannot fully understand what they have found, and knowledge of the younger race's capabilities could be crucial to the dynasty's survival in the awakened galaxy. The debate might have continued indefinitely if not for the arrival of new orders from the Tomb Mind. The Tomb's awakening has reached Phase 4. An overlord is being roused from sleep, one of the nobility whose authority supersedes both Cryptek and Lichguard. The decision about the Dreadnought will be made at a level appropriate to its potential significance. Amontek and Ketoth are ordered to preserve the status quo, maintain security around Chamber Epsilon, and prepare a comprehensive briefing for the Overlord when he achieves full awareness. But as they make these preparations, as the tomb continues its slow awakening around them, none of them notice the subtle changes occurring within the Dreadnought. The living metal connection created by the canoptek spider is doing more than just allow analysis. It is conducting power, tiny amounts, barely measurable, but enough to begin charging the Dreadnought's depleted systems. The process is glacially slow, but it is happening. And in the sarcophagus, in the corrupted flesh suspended in fouled amniotic fluid, synapses that have been dark for months begin to fire. Dreams that were formless begin to take shape. Consciousness, such as it is, begins the long climb toward wakefulness. The Dreadnought awakens. The Overlord who awakens to judge the situation is named Kepresh the Undying, a title he earned through countless campaigns against the Old One's servant races before biotransference. His sarcophagus, an ornate construction of living metal inlaid with symbols that predate current Necron language, rests in Chamber Epsilon's highest security vault. The awakening process for someone of his rank is more sophisticated than the simple activation of warriors or immortals. His personality engrams are carefully loaded, his memory cores verified, his connection to his body tested through multiple redundant systems. The process takes 3 days, during which Ahmontek and Ketoth maintain their vigil over the Dreadnought. In that time, the foreign machine shows no signs of activity beyond the slow accumulation of power through the spider's connection. Its systems remain in shutdown, its weapons cold, its pilot dormant. The Canoptek constructs continue their maintenance work, scarabs flowing over both Necron and Chaos technology with impartial efficiency. When Kepresh finally achieves full consciousness, his first action is to review the reports that have accumulated during his sleep. 60 million years of data, compressed and summarized by the tomb mind, flow through his awareness. He learns of the galaxy's changes, the rise and fall of countless civilizations, the current state of the tomb and the dynasty it houses. And he learns of the anomaly in Chamber Epsilon, this impossible intruder that has captured the attention of both Cryptek and Lichguard. The Overlord's journey to Chamber Epsilon is a formal procession. He is accompanied by his personal guard of Lichguard, their ornate armor marking them as the dynasty's elite. Ahmontek and Ketoth stand at attention as Kepresh enters the chamber, the Overlord's optical sensors sweeping across the scene with the practiced assessment of a military commander. His first words, delivered in the ancient Necrontea language that only the nobility still use among themselves, translate approximately to, "Explain to me how this abomination came to rest in my tomb." Ahmontek provides a comprehensive briefing, walking Kepresh through the geological evidence, the analysis of the machine's technology, and the hypotheses about how it entered the chamber. The Cryptek's presentation is thorough, professional, and carefully neutral in tone. Ketoth adds his military assessment, emphasizing the potential threat the machine represents, if it is indeed functional. Kepresh listens in silence, his optical sensors never leaving the Dreadnought. When the briefings are complete, he approaches the machine himself, circling it slowly, examining it from every angle. His movements are different from those of the lower-tier Necrons, showing a fluidity and grace that speaks to a more sophisticated integration of consciousness and mechanical form. Finally, he speaks. This is a warrior's tomb. Crude, yes. Primitive in construction and philosophy, undoubtedly. But it serves the same purpose as our own sarcophagi, preservation of consciousness beyond the death of flesh. He pauses, optical sensors focusing on the central sarcophagus. The corruption concerns me. The touch of the Imperium has marked this machine and its occupant. We warred against the warp's servants once. It seems we shall do so again. Ahmontek ventures a question. Do you order its destruction, my overlord? Kepresh considers for a long moment before responding. No, not yet. The younger races have advanced in ways we did not anticipate. This machine represents intelligence we can use, but we must understand it fully before making final determinations. He turns to the Cryptek. You believe it can be reactivated? With external power and careful preparation, yes, my overlord. But the pilot's consciousness is likely degraded, possibly to the point of madness, and the chaos corruption makes predicting behavior difficult. Then we shall take precautions. Kepresh gestures to Ketoth. Assemble a containment force. If this thing awakens hostile, I want it neutralized immediately. Ahmontek, you will prepare for controlled reactivation. I wish to speak with this pilot, if such a thing is possible. I would know what has happened in the galaxy during our sleep, and what better source than a warrior who has experienced it firsthand. The preparations take another 2 days. Chamber Epsilon is transformed into a containment cell, its exit sealed, its walls reinforced with additional living metal. Gauss weapons are positioned at strategic points, their targeting systems locked onto the Dreadnought. Power conduits are connected to the machine's systems under Ahmontek's careful supervision, ready to provide the energy needed for reactivation. And through it all, the Dreadnought continues its slow charge, power trickling into its depleted cells through the spider's connection. In the sarcophagus, changes accelerate. The pilot's brain, preserved in its corrupted state for months of dormancy, begins to resume full function. The butcher's nails, those terrible implants that have driven him for 10,000 years, activate their primary functions. Pain floods through the limited nerve endings that still exist. The pilot's consciousness claws its way up from dreams of blood and brother, returning to a reality that is somehow both familiar and alien. It is during the final system checks, moments before Amontech would have initiated the reactivation sequence, that the Dreadnought comes online by itself. Power systems surge to full activity without warning. Optical sensors ignite with baleful red light. Weapon systems activate. Chain blades revving to life. Flamers preparing to spray their deadly payload. And from the sarcophagus comes a sound that has not been heard in this chamber for 60 million years. A human voice, mechanically amplified, but unmistakably biological in origin. The scream that echoes through Chamber Epsilon is not words. It is pure rage and pain, the sound of a consciousness that has been tormented past all reason, past sanity, past anything recognizable as thought. It is the voice of the butcher's nails speaking through a throat that no longer exists, transmitted through speakers designed to strike fear into the hearts of enemies. It is the war cry of the World Eaters, that terrible bloodlust that defined them during the heresy and defines them still. The Dreadnought surges upright from its resting position, moving with a speed that seems impossible for something so massive. The chain blades sweep in a wide arc, cutting through analysis equipment and power conduits, destroying months of careful preparation in seconds. The flamer unleashes a gout of burning promethium, mixed with substances that burn in colors no natural fire should achieve. And the pilot, whatever remains of their consciousness, seeks only one thing: violence, blood, the satisfaction of the nails demands. Capresh, watching from a safe distance behind reinforced walls, gives the order with calm precision. Contain it. The Immortals open fire, their Gauss weapons tearing at the Dreadnought's armor with coherent beams of molecular disruption. The Lich Guard advance, their war scythes crackling with energy designed to slice through the densest materials. And the chamber's automated defenses activate, Tesla weaponry arcing lightning across the space, targeting the intruder with precision born of millions of years of warfare. But the Berserker Dreadnought, purpose-built for exactly this kind of close-quarters carnage, does not fall easily. Its armor, crude by Necron standards, but effective nonetheless, absorbs punishment that would destroy lesser machines. Where Gauss beams tear away alloy, the pilot's rage drives the machine forward regardless. Where lightning strikes arc across its hull, grounding systems designed to withstand worse simply channel the energy harmlessly away. The Dreadnought charges the nearest Lich Guard, chain blades screaming. The Necron warrior brings his war scythe up in a defensive position, the blade's edge meeting the rotating teeth of the chain fist in a shower of sparks and screaming metal. For a moment, they are locked together, Necron martial skill against World Eater fury. Then the Dreadnought's weight and power tell. The chain fist forcing the war scythe aside and connecting with the Lich Guard's torso. Living metal parts before the assault. The chain fist's teeth grinding through necrodermis with brutal efficiency. The Lich Guard's form is bisected, the two halves falling away as the scarabs within its body begin immediate repair protocols. But before it can regenerate, the Dreadnought's flamer bathes the remains in alchemical fire, burning with heat that exceeds what the living metal can repair from. The Lich Guard's optical sensors go dark, its consciousness scattered by trauma too severe for immediate recovery. This first kill, achieved in less than 10 seconds of combat, sends the pilot into even greater heights of rage. The nails reward violence with pleasure, and that pleasure drives the need for more violence. An endless cycle that has defined this warrior's existence for 10,000 years. The Dreadnought pivots, seeking new targets, and finds them in abundance. The chamber erupts into full combat, ancient Necron technology against 10,000-year-old Chaos war machine. Gauss beams tear chunks from the Dreadnought's armor. Tesla arcs cook its internal systems. War scythes slice at its joints, seeking weak points where the armor is thinner. But for every blow the Necrons land, the Dreadnought returns violence tenfold. Chain blades dismember warriors, reducing them to component parts faster than their reanimation protocols can compensate. The flamer turns whole squads into burning metal, the alchemical fire doing damage that even living metal struggles to repair. Amontek, watching from his protected observation position, runs rapid calculations. The Dreadnought is powerful, yes, but it is one machine against dozens of Necron warriors and the chamber's built-in defenses. Mathematics say it must fall eventually, but mathematics, the Cryptek is learning, do not fully account for the variable of absolute focused rage channeled through a body that feels no fear and knows no retreat. Kepresh reaches the same conclusion, slightly faster. Ahmontech, he orders, over the tactical channel. Activate Containment Protocol 7. The Cryptek hesitates. Protocol 7 means flooding the chamber with energy pulses that will disable both Necron and enemy systems indiscriminately. Every construct in the chamber will be shut down, including the immortals and the automated defenses. My overlord, our warriors will be repairable, Kepresh interrupts. Unlike this chamber, if the battle continues, activate the protocol. Amontek complies, transmitting the activation codes to the Tomb Mind. Throughout Chamber Epsilon, hidden emitters begin charging, drawing on power reserves kept for exactly this kind of emergency. The process takes 15 seconds, during which the battle continues unabated. Another Lich Guard falls to the chain blades. 3 more warriors are reduced to molten slag by the flamer. An Immortal's Gauss rifle scores a direct hit on the Dreadnought's right arm, severing control conduits, and the chain blades stutter and die. But the left arm with its flamer compensates, bathing the successful shooter in burning death. Then the emitters fire. Pure electromagnetic energy floods the chamber in a pulse that disrupts electrical systems at their most fundamental level. The Immortals freeze mid-action, their neural matrices overwhelmed. The automated defenses go silent. The Lich Guard collapse as if their strings have been cut. And the Dreadnought, its systems similarly vulnerable to the pulse despite their foreign design, simply stops. Power systems cycling down, weapons going silent, optical sensors fading to darkness. In the sudden silence that follows, only the faint sounds of living metal repairing itself and the crackle of dying alchemical fires can be heard. Kepresh surveys the damage through remote sensors, calculating losses and assessing tactical lessons. Then he speaks, his voice carrying a tone that might, in a being capable of emotion, be called respect. A worthy adversary, primitive in construction but effective in execution. The younger races are more dangerous than we anticipated. Clash of ancient technologies. The Dreadnought's second shutdown is more complete than its first. Amontek takes no chances this time, ensuring that the machine's power cells are fully drained, that all external connections are severed, that even the living metal link created by the Canoptek spider is broken. The Berserker's brief rampage has destroyed much of the analysis equipment, killed or severely damaged a dozen Necron warriors, and demonstrated conclusively that reactivation without proper containment was a severe miscalculation on the Overlord's part. But it has also provided invaluable data. The combat recordings, analyzed frame by frame, reveal capabilities that Amontek finds both disturbing and fascinating. The Dreadnought's speed of response, the efficiency of its targeting systems, the raw power of its close combat weapons, all speak to a design philosophy that prioritizes overwhelming force over tactical flexibility. More concerning is the pilot's complete disregard for self-preservation. The machine took damage that should have prompted retreat or defensive positioning, but the pilot simply drove forward, accepting hits in order to close with targets. This is not merely battle programming, Ahmontek realizes. This is something else, something that might once have been called Berserker rage. if the Necron tier still had words for such organic concepts. The pilot is not following tactical protocols, but rather some deeper compulsion that overrides rational threat assessment. Combined with the chaos corruption, this makes the machine exceptionally dangerous, even to opponents who should theoretically outmatch it. Kepresh, reviewing the same data, reaches similar conclusions. "We cannot destroy it," he announces to the assembled cryptechs and military commanders who have gathered for the post-combat analysis. "Its technology is too valuable, too revealing of what the younger races have achieved, but neither can we risk another uncontrolled activation." "Perhaps," suggests Amontech, "we do not reactivate it at all. The machine itself can be studied in its dormant state. The pilot's consciousness is irrelevant to understanding the technology." But another voice speaks up, a cryptech specializing in chronomancy who has recently been awakened. "The pilot is not irrelevant. It has lived through the 60 million years we slept, experienced the rise and fall of civilizations, witnessed events we can only hypothesize about. If we could access its memories, its knowledge, the intelligence value would be immeasurable." This leads to a debate about whether such access is even possible. The pilot's consciousness exists in organic tissue, not in data cores that the Necrons can simply read. The neural interfaces connect biological and mechanical, but they are designed for motor control and sensory input, not for extracting memories. The corruption adds another layer of difficulty. Who knows how the warp's influence has altered the pilot's mental processes? Amontech proposes a solution: biotransference. Not the full conversion that the Necron tier underwent, but a partial extraction, copying the pilot's engrams into a Necron data core where they can be analyzed. The technology exists, though it has not been used in 60 million years. The process would likely destroy the organic components, killing the pilot in any traditional sense, but preserving their consciousness in a form the Necrons can interact with. This proposal is met with mixed reactions. Some cryptechs see it as an elegant solution to the intelligence gathering problem. Others argue that exposing Necron biotransference technology to chaos-corrupted flesh might introduce contamination into their own systems. And a few, veterans of the wars against the Old Ones and their warp-using servants, warn that consciousness touched by the Imperium should not be allowed any contact with Necron systems, regardless of potential benefits. The debate is interrupted by alarms from Chamber Epsilon, despite all precautions, despite the complete power drain, despite the severed connections. The Dreadnought is showing signs of activity. Specifically, the biological components are generating their own electrical signals, neural activity spiking without any external stimulus. The pilot is trying to wake up, is actively fighting the shutdown protocols, driven by something deeper than programming or conscious choice. This changes the tactical situation. If the pilot can generate activity even without power, then true dormancy may not be possible. The machine might reactivate spontaneously at any moment, and without proper containment in place, the results could be catastrophic for the tomb's awakening process. Kepresh makes a decision. Amontech, you will proceed with your extraction proposal, but take every precaution. Isolate the data core. Use the most ancient protocols, those predating even our contact with the Cetan, and if contamination is detected at any point, you will immediately purge the system. Understood? The cryptech acknowledges the order and begins preparations. The process of biotransference, even the partial version he proposes, requires specialized equipment that must be fabricated from scratch. Fortunately, the tomb's manufacturing capabilities, designed to produce everything from simple tools to complex war machines, are sufficient for the task. Canoptech scarabs swarm in directed patterns, their collective mass transforming into the devices Amontech needs. While construction proceeds, other preparations are made. Chamber Epsilon is reinforced further, additional layers of living metal sealing it off from the rest of the tomb. The containment protocols are upgraded, with multiple redundant shutdown systems ready to activate at the first sign of trouble. and a direct connection is established to the tomb's central power core, allowing Kepresh to simply cut all energy to the entire section if necessary, sacrificing the chambers and everything in them to protect the tomb's more vital areas. The extraction equipment, when completed, is both beautiful and terrible. It resembles nothing so much as a Necron sarcophagus, but inverted, designed to receive organic consciousness rather than preserve necrodermis form. Neural probes extend from it, each one a masterpiece of nanotechnology capable of interfacing with biological tissue at the cellular level. Data cores wait empty, ready to receive the patterns that make up a mind. And at the center, shielded behind fields that would take considerable force to breach, is the biotransference matrix itself. The same technology that transformed an entire race 60 million years ago, now prepared to analyze one corrupted warrior from a species that barely existed when the Necrons went to sleep. Amontech personally oversees the placement of the Dreadnought in the extraction cradle, using canoptech constructs to move the machine rather than risking any Necron warriors who might suffer damage. The neural probes extend, seeking the interface points on the sarcophagus, burrowing through armor with focused energy beams until they reach the biological core. The pilot, whatever consciousness persists in that corrupted flesh, gives no sign of awareness as the invasion proceeds. When all probes are in position, Amontech activates the first phase of extraction. The neural probes begin mapping the pilot's brain, creating a detailed scan of every synapse, every neural pathway, every stored memory, encoded in the architecture of organic thought. The process is slow, methodical, designed to capture everything without causing damage that might corrupt the data. What the scans reveal horrifies even Amontech's limited emotional capacity. The pilot's brain is a catastrophe of damage and degradation. Entire regions have been consumed by mutation, flesh transforming into things that should not exist in normal reality. The butcher's nails have become integrated into the tissue at a level that makes them inseparable from the organic components they were meant to augment. And throughout everything, the touch of chaos. That corruption of the warp that transforms matter according to its own mad logic. But underneath all that damage, underneath the degradation and mutation, a consciousness persists. Fragmented, yes. Barely coherent, certainly, but recognizably the remnant of something that was once sentient. The cryptech begins the next phase, initiating the actual transfer of neural patterns into the Necron data core. This is where the process goes wrong. The engrams, as they are copied, carry with them the taint of their organic origin. The chaos corruption, which should be nothing more than physical alteration of matter, somehow transfers into the purely electronic medium of the data core. It is impossible by every principle of physics the Necrons understand, and yet it happens anyway, because the warp does not respect physical laws. Amontech detects the contamination immediately and initiates purge protocols. The data core is flooded with deletion signals, every byte of information it contains wiped in microseconds. But in those microseconds, something transfers out from the core into the broader systems. Not the pilot's consciousness, not their memories, but something else. A touch of the Imperium, a fragment of chaos, finding purchase in technology that was never designed to resist such intrusion. The tomb mind, that vast artificial intelligence that governs the tomb's systems, detects the intrusion and responds with measures perfected over millions of years. Firewalls activate, isolation protocols engage. The contaminated systems are cut off from the greater network, quarantined in a digital cage where they can do no harm. But even as this happens, Amontech realizes the magnitude of their error. They have tried to apply logic to the illogical, to analyze the Imperium using tools designed for physical reality. The chaos corruption is not a virus or a software intrusion that can be countered with conventional means. It is a fundamental violation of the principles on which Necron technology operates, and attempting to contain it using their own systems has simply given it a foothold where none should be possible. The final phase of the extraction is never completed. Amontech cancels the process, severing all connections between the Dreadnought and the Necron systems, burning out the neural probes with overload rather than risk further contamination. The data cores are purged again, this time with absolute thoroughness that leaves them not just empty, but structurally scrambled beyond any hope of recovery. And in Chamber Epsilon, the isolation goes deeper, every connection to the outside cut, every data link severed, until the chamber becomes a completely sealed pocket cut off from the tomb's network. Inside this isolation, the Dreadnought sits in its extraction cradle, the pilot's consciousness mercifully dormant again after the trauma of attempted transfer. The machine is undamaged, its systems intact, but it is now more dangerous than ever because the Necrons understand that they cannot risk trying to interface with it again. Whatever intelligence might be extracted from the pilot, whatever knowledge they might possess, is forever beyond reach because the cost of accessing it is too high. Kepresh, receiving Amontech's report on the failed extraction, makes a decision that comes as close to emotional reaction as his mechanical form allows. Seal Chamber Epsilon permanently. Let nothing enter or leave. The machine remains there, studied from a distance if at all, but never again connected to our systems. But before this final sealing can be implemented, a new voice speaks in the council chambers, where the Overlord meets with his advisors. It is Executor Ketoth, the Lich Guard who first assessed the Dreadnought as a threat. His form has been fully repaired from the damage sustained in the first battle, his consciousness restored to full function, and he brings a different perspective to the debate. My Overlord, I propose an alternative. We cannot study the machine safely. We cannot extract its pilot's knowledge. But we can use it. The younger races have created a weapon of considerable power. Let us deploy it against our enemies. Let it fulfill its purpose of destruction, but aimed at targets we select rather than at our own forces. This proposal is radical enough that it creates immediate opposition. Use chaos-tainted technology. Allow something touched by the warp to serve the dynasty. The very idea violates principles that the Necrons have held since before biotransference. But Ketoth presses his point. We are awakening into a galaxy full of threats we do not fully understand. The Imperium of man, whose technology created this machine, the forces of chaos which corrupted it, and countless other Xenos species we have yet to encounter. Every weapon we can bring to bear, every advantage we can seize, increases our chances of reclaiming the dominion we once held. The machine is dangerous, yes, but danger aimed at our enemies is advantage to ourselves. The debate that follows will determine the Dreadnought's fate, and, in some small way, the path the dynasty takes as it awakens fully into the grim darkness of the far future. Possible outcomes and resolutions. The final decision about the Berserker, Dreadnought's fate, falls to Overlord Kepresh, and the weight of that decision reflects competing priorities that pull the dynasty in different directions. The conservative approach, advocated by many of the older cryptechs, calls for complete destruction of the machine. Disassemble it, study the component parts in isolation, learn what can be learned from dead technology, rather than risk the contamination that active systems might bring. This is the safe path, the one that minimizes risk and respects the protocols developed over millions of years. The aggressive approach, championed by Executor Ketoth and some of the younger nobility who remember the wars of succession before the Great Sleep, argues for weaponization. Control the Dreadnought through external means, guide it toward enemies, and let its terrible efficiency serve the dynasty's interests. The Necrons have deployed far worse weapons in their long history. The Aeonic Orb, capable of aging entire fleets to dust. The World Engine, which consumed planets. Compared to such monstrosities, one corrupted war machine seems almost benign. And then there is Amontech's position, which evolves as he analyzes the data from the failed extraction. The cryptech sees in the Dreadnought something that troubles him at a fundamental level. It is not the chaos corruption, or the crude technology, or even the violence of its pilot. It is the underlying concept, the idea that consciousness can be preserved in machinery, that warriors too valuable to lose can be kept functional beyond the death of their flesh. This is what the Necrons are, fundamentally. And seeing that same principle implemented by a younger race, even implemented poorly, raises questions about whether the Necrons are as unique as they have always believed. Perhaps, Amontech suggests during one of the final strategy sessions, we should return the machine to its makers. This proposal is so unexpected that it stops the debate entirely. Ketoth speaks first. Return it. Why would we give a weapon back to potential enemies? Because, the cryptech explains, it tells them something about us. It demonstrates that we found their warrior, analyzed their technology, and chose mercy over destruction. The intelligence value works both ways. They learn that we exist, that we are awakening, that we are not immediately hostile to their kind, and we gain the opportunity to observe how they react to this gesture, what it reveals about their culture and intentions. Capresh considers this carefully. His strategic experience, spanning thousands of years before the Great Sleep, includes countless first contacts with Xenos species. Some were resolved through immediate warfare, others through diplomacy, however strained. The advantage of the diplomatic approach was intelligence gathering, learning about potential opponents before committing to full conflict. The disadvantage was showing your hand, revealing capabilities that might better be kept secret. The World Eaters, he finally says, using the designation that Amontech has extracted from the Dreadnought's external markings, serve the entities of the warp. They are corrupted beyond redemption by all accounts. Returning their warrior to them gains us nothing. Then destroy it and be done, Ketoth argues. Every moment we debate, we risk the contamination spreading despite our precautions. The pilot's consciousness may be dormant now, but we have seen that it can activate spontaneously. The chaos taint may be contained now, but can we be certain it will remain so? I say we reduce the entire machine to component atoms and disperse those atoms across different solar systems where they can never recombine. But another cryptech, one specializing in probability analysis, suggests a fourth option. What if we do nothing? Simply leave the machine sealed in Chamber Epsilon, preserved exactly as we found it, for future examination, when we have better understanding of chaos corruption and how to handle it safely. We are awakening gradually. Our full capabilities will take decades or centuries to restore. Perhaps when more of our senior technical adepts have been revived, they will see solutions we currently lack. This pragmatic approach appeals to Capresh for several reasons. It maintains all options while committing to none. It acknowledges the limits of their current knowledge while preserving the possibility of future action, and it contains the immediate threat without requiring resources that might be better used elsewhere in the tomb's awakening process. Very well, the Overlord decides. Chamber Epsilon remains sealed. The machine stays there, preserved in its current state. We will establish monitoring protocols to ensure the pilot does not awaken unexpectedly, and we will revisit this decision in 100 standard years, when more of the dynasty has been revived and we have better understanding of the current galactic situation. This judgment satisfies no one completely, which Capresh takes as evidence that it is probably the correct middle path. The chamber is sealed with multiple layers of living metal, each one capable of containing a full breach attempt. Monitoring equipment is positioned outside the sealed zone, ready to detect any activity within, and the Tomb Mine's protocols are updated to include Chamber Epsilon as a permanent threat containment area, not to be opened without explicit authorization from Overlord-level command. The Dreadnought remains as it was found, lying in the extraction cradle, systems dormant, pilot unconscious, a mystery wrapped in armor and corruption. It is a time capsule from an era the Necrons missed, a message from races they do not yet understand, a warning about the dangers of the Imperium that they will face again as they reclaim the galaxy. But for now, it simply waits, as the Necrons themselves have waited for so long, in darkness and silence. Months pass. The tomb's awakening continues. More chambers coming online, more warriors rising from their stasis, more of the dynasty's hierarchy being restored to function. The Dreadnought incident becomes part of the tomb's operational history, a cautionary tale about the unexpected threats that await in the awakened galaxy. Amontek writes extensive reports on the failed extraction, documenting what went wrong and what might be done differently in the future. Ketoth uses the combat data to refine defensive protocols, ensuring that if another foreign war machine somehow enters the tomb, the response will be more effective. And in Chamber Epsilon, behind all those layers of sealing, something stirs. Not the Dreadnought itself, which remains as dormant as Necron technology can ensure, but in the foul amniotic fluid of the sarcophagus, in the corrupted flesh of the pilot, in the deepest recesses of a consciousness that has been tortured for 10,000 years, awareness persists. The pilot dreams of battles yet to come, of enemies not yet met, of blood not yet spilled. The butcher's nails continue their work, creating pain and demanding violence. That terrible cycle that can never be broken while the pilot lives. In these dreams, sometimes, there are other presences. Visions of skeletal warriors in green metal, of weapons that unmake matter, of tombs that stretch forever into darkness. The pilot's degraded consciousness cannot process these images properly, cannot understand what they mean, but some part of them, buried deep beneath the corruption and madness, recognizes that they are in a place strange beyond comprehension, surrounded by entities whose nature defies categorization. If the pilot could form coherent thoughts, they might wonder how they came to be here. They might question the twisted path that led from the arena of Nuceria, where Angron first learned to kill, through the Horus heresy, through 10,000 years of service to the blood god, to this final resting place in a tomb built by beings who worshipped their own gods and waged their own wars millions of years before humanity existed. But coherent thought is beyond the pilot now, has been beyond them for centuries. There is only the rage, the pain, and the dreams that mix memory and madness into something that might once have been called nightmare. The Necrons, logical and analytical as always, attempt to quantify what they have learned from this encounter. They update their databases on younger race capabilities. They refine their threat assessment protocols. They document the chaos corruption and its effects on both organic and mechanical systems. But in doing so, they miss something important, something that their transformed nature makes difficult for them to grasp. The Dreadnought represents a mirror of their own existence, a reflection that shows them what they have become through different means. The pilot, like all Necrons, is consciousness divorced from organic life, preserved in a metal shell, denied the release of true death. The machine, like the Necron necrodermis bodies, is a prison and a preservation both, keeping its occupant functional long past when nature would have claimed them. And the tragedy of it all, the fundamental horror that the Necrons cannot fully recognize, because they are living that same tragedy themselves, is that this existence might be worse than the death it prevents. A human observer, if one could somehow witness this scenario, might see the cruel irony. Two ancient horrors, the Necrons and the Chaos Dreadnought, meeting in darkness, each a testament to the terrible things that civilizations will do in pursuit of immortality. But there are no human observers here, only machines that were once alive, and a consciousness that can no longer remember what life felt like. Years will pass before Chamber Epsilon is opened again, if it is ever opened. The galaxy will turn, wars will be fought, empires will rise and fall. The tomb will continue its awakening, the dynasty will reclaim its strength, and the Necrons will once again become a force in galactic affairs. And through it all, the Dreadnought will wait, just as it has waited through countless battles and long silences, just as it will wait until the universe itself grows cold and dark, or until someone, either Necron or Chaos Space Marine, or some third party not yet anticipated, decides that the time has come to disturb this particular tomb and wake this particular sleeper. But that, as they say, is a story for another day. Broader implications for both factions. The encounter between Necrons and Chaos. Dreadnought, however brief and however localized, represents something larger than the fate of one war machine or one tomb world. It is the first brushstroke in a larger picture, a preview of the conflicts and confusions that will define the awakened galaxy. For both the Necrons and the forces of Chaos, this meeting holds lessons that echo far beyond Chamber Epsilon. For the Necrons, the existence of the Berserker Dreadnought confirms their worst suspicions about what has occurred during their 60 million years of sleep. The younger races have not simply survived, they have thrived, developing technologies that, while primitive compared to Necron mastery, are nonetheless sophisticated enough to be dangerous. More concerning is the clear evidence of Chaos influence. The entities of the warp, those beings the Old Ones served or created or allied with depending on which historical accounts you believe, have not faded into obscurity. They remain active, corrupting and empowering the younger races, just as they empowered the Aeldari and others during the war in heaven. This realization carries strategic implications that ripple through every aspect of Necron planning. They cannot simply reclaim the galaxy through superior technology and immortal persistence. They face enemies who wield power from the Imperium, that realm beyond physical reality where Necron science has always struggled to operate. The Citan, those star gods the Necrons once served and then shattered, gave them dominion over material reality, but left them vulnerable to warp-based attacks. This vulnerability, manageable when facing the young races of the Old One's creation, becomes far more serious when facing established chaos cults with 10,000 years of practice at their craft. Different dynasties will respond to this information in different ways as they awaken. Some will pursue technological countermeasures, attempting to develop defenses against warp corruption, despite the fundamental incompatibility between Necron technology and immaterial forces. The Technomandrites, those most skilled cryptechs who were sealed away by the Silent King before the Great Sleep, have begun emerging in response to the opening of the Great Rift. Their genius may find solutions where conventional approaches have failed. Or they may conclude, as Amontech did, that some threats cannot be safely engaged, and must instead be avoided or destroyed from a distance. Other dynasties may choose diplomatic approaches. The Necrons are not, despite what younger races believe, simple extermination machines. They are the remnants of a civilization with millions of years of history, including extensive experience with alliances, treaties, and political maneuvering. If the forces of chaos cannot be defeated through direct assault, perhaps they can be turned against other enemies, or isolated, or contained through methods that do not require direct engagement. The Silent King himself has demonstrated this pragmatic approach, even negotiating with the Imperium of man when circumstances demanded. For the Chaos forces, particularly the World Eaters, the implications are subtler, but no less significant. The loss of one Dreadnought, even a veteran machine from the Heresy era, is tactically insignificant. Warbands lose equipment and warriors constantly in their endless wars. But the strategic picture is different. Somewhere in the galaxy, Necron tomb worlds are awakening, and these ancient Xenos may prove to be allies, enemies, or simply obstacles, depending on circumstances. Horn, the blood god to whom the World Eaters are dedicated, cares nothing for such strategic considerations. Blood is blood, skulls are skulls, and whether they come from humans, Necrons, or any other race matters only in volume and quality. The World Eaters, driven by the Butcher's Nails and their devotion to their god, will attack Necrons with the same mindless fury they bring to all enemies. But other chaos forces, particularly those serving Tzeentch, who value knowledge and manipulation, may see opportunity in the Necron awakening. The intersection of Necron technology and chaos corruption represents a frontier that has rarely been explored. The Necrons' immunity to conventional warp influence, stemming from their soulless nature, makes them poor targets for possession or most forms of corruption. But as the failed extraction attempt demonstrated, their technology is not completely immune. There may be ways to subvert Necron systems, to introduce discord into their ordered hierarchies, to turn their own precision against them through carefully applied chaos. This possibility would concern the Necrons greatly if they fully understood it. Their entire civilization is built on order, on hierarchies that have remained stable for millions of years, on technologies that function according to principles so well understood that they border on natural law. The idea that these foundations could be corrupted from within, that their own systems could turn against them, represents an existential threat that they have never faced before. The Satan betrayed them, yes, but that was a known enemy with understood motivations. Chaos corruption works differently, exploiting weaknesses the Necrons may not even recognize as weaknesses until they have already been compromised. There are also the broader implications for galactic politics. The Imperium of Man, that vast, sprawling empire that has dominated human space for 10,000 years, faces threats from all directions: chaos from within, tyrannids from beyond, orcs wherever they can grow. The awakening of the Necrons adds another major force to this already complicated equation. Some in the Imperium may see the Necrons as potential allies against chaos, beings whose immunity to warp influence makes them useful partners in certain conflicts. Others will recognize them as yet another Xenos threat that must be purged, another abomination that has no place in a galaxy ruled by humanity. The Eldar, both Craftworld and Dark varieties, carry ancient memories of the war in heaven and the Necrons' original empire. They know better than any other race what the Necrons are capable of when fully awakened. Their response to the Necron resurgence has been characteristically complex, sometimes fighting against them, sometimes manipulating events to use them against other threats, always plotting and scheming with the long view that centuries of life allow. The addition of chaos corruption into Necron systems, even in limited form, will concern the Eldar deeply. They have experience with both forces, and the thought of them combining in any way represents a nightmare scenario. The Tyranids, those extragalactic devourers who hunger for all biomass, present perhaps the strangest implication. They have no souls to corrupt, no technology to subvert, no culture to manipulate. They simply consume, breaking down all matter into its component elements to fuel their endless expansion. The Necrons represent one of the few forces in the galaxy that can effectively resist Tyranid consumption, simply because there is no biomass to consume. But Tyranid adaptation is legendary, and already there are reports of hive fleets developing new approaches to fighting Necron forces. The question of what happens when Tyranids encounter chaos-corrupted Necron technology remains unanswered, but the possibilities are universally disturbing. And through all of this, through all the strategic implications and tactical considerations and political maneuvering, there remains the simple human element, if we can call it that. The Berserker Dreadnought's pilot, whatever they once were before the nails and the heresy and 10,000 years of service to the blood god, continues to exist in their metal tomb. They have no concept of the larger forces moving around them, no awareness of the implications their capture by the Necrons might have. They only know rage and pain and the endless cycle of violence that the nails demand. In that sense, the pilot might be seen as the most tragic figure in this entire scenario. At least the Necrons chose their transformation, made the decision to undergo biotransference, even if they did not fully understand what they were giving up. The Dreadnought pilot had no such choice. They were wounded beyond recovery and given only two options: death or interment. They chose life, or perhaps their superiors chose for them. And that choice has led to 10,000 years of existence that can barely be called life at all. This tragedy repeats across the galaxy 1,000,000 times. Every Dreadnought pilot, loyal or traitor, experiences some version of this existence. Every Necron, from the lowliest warrior to the highest overlord, lives in a body that is both prison and preservation. And every one of them carries the weight of choices made long ago, decisions that seemed necessary at the time, but which have led to consequences that stretch across eons. The encounter in Chamber Epsilon will not be the last time Necrons and Chaos forces meet. As more tomb worlds awaken and the forces of Chaos continue their long war against the Imperium, such meetings will become increasingly common. Each one will carry the potential for catastrophe, for corruption, for violence that serves neither side's interests, but occurs anyway because war is what both factions know best. And each one will add another layer to the complex tapestry of the grimdark future. Another story of ancient horrors meeting in darkness. Another reminder that in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. But perhaps, in some small way, the tale of the Berserker Dreadnought and the Necron tomb offers a different kind of lesson. It demonstrates that even the most implacable enemies can choose restraint when it serves their interests. That ancient evils can recognize threats too dangerous to engage directly. That wisdom, even mechanical or corrupted wisdom, sometimes manifests as the decision not to act rather than to act. These are cold comforts in a cold universe, but they are something. A small light in the darkness, however brief, however dim. The Dreadnought still waits in its sealed chamber. The Necrons still awaken from their long sleep. The galaxy still turns on its endless cycle of conflict and tragedy. And somewhere, in the warp, or in the Imperium, or in the spaces between where neither mortal nor immortal can easily travel, the gods and entities and forces that shape reality continue their own eternal wars, using mortals and machines as their pieces on a board that spans the galaxy itself. If you found this exploration of Necrons discovering a sleeping Berserker Dreadnought in their tomb fascinating, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more deep dives into the Warhammer 40,000 universe. We explore the lore, the conflicts, and the countless stories that make this grimdark future so compelling. Hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload, and let us know in the comments what scenario you would like us to explore next. The galaxy is vast, the possibilities endless, and we are just beginning to explore them. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.